Hey y'all, so are you in a space where you're asking yourself, how can I rest if the life that I am living does not allow for me to rest? First of all, if you're in that space, I get you because I completely understand. And I have asked myself this question so many times when people are saying you need to rest. And I'm like, cool, I need to rest. Got it. But also, like, I commute to my location for work, and that's over an hour. I have kids and they go to school, and I have, the podcast, and I have the things that I do for my social media platforms to try to help people break free from bondage. I say yes to a lot of speaking engagements and things that I'm doing outside of what I do for my regular 9 to 5. And I'm also a single mom. So tell me where that rest fits in. And one of the things that I have learned, and this has been quite recently, actually, two of the things that I've learned. The first one is, and this came from one of my administrators at work. Something that she told me was, your kids will never remember that you did all the dishes in the sink. They'll never remember that you cleaned all their laundry, folded it, and put it away. But what they will remember is how you spent your time with them. And she's not wrong on that one because I remember those things about my childhood. And so I had to think about, was I prioritizing productivity over the people in my life? And there was a space where I could find some glimpses of rest. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that we tend to think of rest as sitting down and not having to do the tasks on our to-do list. But oftentimes that is not the form of rest that we really need. And we would be more capable of doing the things that we have to do well if we stopped doing these other things, just based on habit alone. And so for one of the things that I do outside of my 9 to 5, the leader of that group, shout out to Tunda, love her, had me take this quiz that I alluded to on the podcast on Monday. And I really thought that the type of rest that I needed was physical because I'm always doing something. And what ended up happening as a result of taking that quiz which I will link, is that it was emotional rest. And when I started to think about the weight that a person who is in my position and probably in a lot of your position carries just in the mental space, where we're constantly making decisions, we're constantly planning things, we're constantly doing all the things for all the people, the weight that that carries is astronomical. And it's not even just where we are physically and the demands that the roles that we place on us, but it's all the decisions that need to be made behind the scenes in order to make that machine move. And so when I really started to think about what would create emotional rest, because the rest that I think that I need, I'm not capable of getting that rest. My life doesn't allow for that type of rest. Now, could I sit down more and not do all the things? Of course. Could I stop creating projects for myself? Of course. Could I pay some people to do the things that I spend my weekend doing? Probably. However, there are a lot of tabs running in the background of my brain that make it so that I'm overwhelmed and exhausted in just my everyday activity. And so what are some of those things that I can really scale down in order to not always feel like I'm in a space where I don't want anybody to talk to me or ask me to do anything because I've been doing stuff for people all day long, and I get 30 minutes in the evening where no one's asking me to do anything, and I don't want you to ask me to do anything else or to have an expectation or to have a role to play, right? So the first thing is, if you're an overthinker like me, which I know a lot of us are, we have to learn how to rest our minds. And something, again, that I said on the podcast earlier this week is, you can stop the thoughts that are in your brain. And oftentimes we let them run rampant because we're like, well, I'm just thinking through this. No, you're letting your thoughts run your emotions. So when we're overthinking, we just are on this constant loop of thoughts and catastrophizing things and finding chaos and looking for problems so that we can already have the solutions mapped out, when that overthinking is not allowing us to ever rest our minds. Like, can you sit in silence? And I know that if you have little kids running around and if you're in a role at work where people are always talking to you, that's difficult. But something that I found to work is putting your headphones on and playing beach sounds and just taking 10 to 15 minutes to not think about anything. This is what meditation does. It's a clearing out of the mind. It's not allowing all of these thoughts in, it's clearing all of the thoughts that aren't needed out of your brain. This is why I write lists for everything. This is why I use my calendar app so much, because when I have these constant lists running in my brain, it's taking up so much space. It's not allowing my hardware to operate properly. So I have to get rid of them. I have to get them out on paper or put them in a space where I don't have to think about them anymore. So we have to figure out how to stop the loop of overthinking and rest our minds. And the way we do that is get really good at stopping our thoughts. This is not productive. This is not helping me. I'm not going down this rabbit hole. The second one is we really have to learn how to rest in God's presence. Oftentimes we get really used to doing over leaning, right? So we want to do all of the things he requires of us. And oftentimes he's requiring us to lean on him. And so if we can get really good in resting in his presence and allowing ourselves to lean on him instead of feeling like we need to be productive for him, he will give us what we need in those moments to be able to rest, to be able to rest in him, to be able to lean on him. But when we feel like God's only going to love me if I'm doing enough, then we forget how to lean on him when he just wants time with us. So we have to learn really how to stop feeling like we need to do more and start feeling like we can lean more. Because when we lean into him, he's going to give us that rest. We also have to learn how to rest in our priorities. Making everything a fire is what we often do because we know that that has helped us to create solutions. It's a fire now, I solve it, I go on. It's a fire now, I solve it, I go on. And if I leave it low enough on my priority list, then I'm probably not going to get it finished. So I have to make it a fire in order to finish it, resolve it, and move on. But we can prioritize those things. The laundry that's in the laundry room is not a fire. The dishes that are in the sink, also not a fire. Your kid needing to be picked up from school because they vomited today, pretty big of a fire, not like the most big fire, not the biggest fire. Let me get my words together, but still maybe something that it's higher on the priority list, needs to be taken care of right now. We oftentimes will place it in our brain as it needs to happen right now. We need to resolve the chaos just so that we can get to that next thing on our to-do list, because we know that if we don't make it urgent, that it'll fall to the to-do list for tomorrow. And sometimes that's what has to happen. The dishes might fall to the to-do list for tomorrow. You might have to delegate that task, and it's okay. But you have to learn how to prioritize. Otherwise, your to-do list will always be the most urgent thing for all of the things. Changing the litter box will be at the same height as your tire pops and you need a new one, because it's the only way that you know how to get things done. Another one is to rest your heart. And I feel like this one should have probably been the first one, because when our emotions are in disarray, and we have not healed the wounds that live there, and we've been stuffing them or not processing them, our heart is breaking, and all of our emotions are tainted by the brokenness of our heart. So where our feelings are hurt easier, and our emotions are at a heightened state of anger and frustration and resentment and all of these things. But if we heal our emotions first, if we go to the core of that emotional wound, it leaves space for us to deal with all of the things that we're dealing with throughout the day. So if you want rest from constantly feeling like everyone needs you and no one appreciates you, etc., if you access your emotional wounds and you really get into the heart of your heart, you'll find that you need to heal that part of you that's frustrated at everybody else for not being able to find a way to do it on their own, because you had to figure out how to do it on your own because nobody was there to do it all for you when you were a kid. And you can't let that bleed onto everybody else. So when you're in this emotional angst and you're feeling all of this pain emotionally, you have to heal that so that you can rest the parts that are so focused on that, so that you can lessen the cortisol that's running through your veins, telling you that everything's an emergency, and be able to just calmly process life, not from a place of hurt or anger, but just from a this is what's happening. When we do these things, we're able to free up space for rest, to be less about survival and more about care. Less about, I can't do anymore. I'm going to be in my bed for 2 days because I'm taking back what was taken from me. And that's the only way I can survive this week ahead of me. And more about, I care about me. So I'm going to make sure that all of the things that are running on that tab in the back are taken care of and closed, so that it's not a constant feeling and a constant thought and a constant doing and a constant everything's on fire. And it's just I've taken care of myself back here so I can close all of these tabs. I've taken care of how I feel so I can close that tab. And so today, I just encourage you, if you're in a space where you feel like the world is telling me to rest, but ain't nobody got time for that, I would really, really, really love for you to walk through a process, write down the steps of ways to stop your overthinking in its tracks, to feeling like you don't need to produce all the time, but that you can just sit in God's presence for even if it's 10 minutes a day, to get Him to fill up those spaces where you feel overwhelmed and overworked, to really think about what you're prioritizing and why you're doing it that way, and to allow your emotions to be taken care of with gentleness and with grace. If you're in that space today and this message resonated with you, go ahead and look me up on all social media sites and share this message with somebody else that it might help to break free from bondage. If you want to reach out to me directly, you can look me up on any of those social media sites. And I'm just here to really help you to break free from the bondage that I know that I've dealt with myself, and for you to be the catalyst to make this message contagious so that we aren't all out here feeling like I have to just keep doing and I can't rest because I don't have time for that. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next time.